I'd also like to welcome our special guest this evening, artist Leslie Kingsley. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Great to have you with us.
Yes.
You're a spiritual artist.
Yes. The work I do is influenced by spirit. It's the way it works.
So how does that work? As a spiritual artist, you get a vision of a shadow that's around a particular being or a presence?
I could understand why someone might think that when people describe me as a spiritual artist, but it's actually, it stems back to my childhood. When I was very, very young, I always had a sense of, whenever I picked up a pencil or a paintbrush or a chalk, that I was immediately surrounded by love. I could just feel this incredible presence around me, and the more I would work, the more that love would come into me. And I didn't understand what it was. It was like breathing. It was something really natural. And the more I did that, the more I opened up to information and abilities that were beyond what I had.
So what would you say then were your early influences? Maybe nature or?
Spot on. It was when I would escape from the family and everybody else and sit alone in nature that I would, the only way to describe it is that I would become really intoxicated. It was a kind of, as I grew older, a kind of intoxication that the Sufis and some of the other spiritual writers write about. But I just became a feeling of connection and totally uplifted by everything, and that's what I wanted to do when I would start to paint and draw, was to communicate that, because I found I was unable to communicate that to family members and that sort of thing. I couldn't explain to them what I experienced. It caused them to be fearful about what was going on with this young boy.
So if your parents were having some issues with understanding that, who would you say were the greatest people or supporters or influences for your work?
When I was older, when I was at university, I met an uncle who was really switched on. He taught meditation and a variety of other things and gave talks on spirituality. And he was able to assist me a lot in the understanding of that. Yeah, that would be that and that connection that I'd made. The more I came to understand that, the more I was able to put a personality to that, what I call a particular aspect of divinity, which is what I interacted with when I was painting and drawing.
Art really is an expression of divinity in my books. I'm a makeup artist and I see art in every form as an expression of that divinity.
Yes, yes, I can appreciate that completely.
Yeah.
It's that divinity that's innate in nature, innate in all of us, that we connect with, and it's that uplifts people when they hear great music or look at great art. It takes them up out of themselves. They may experience it as an emotion, or they may experience it as elation, but it's that connection, and that's what I've always wanted to do through my art, as I said, since I was a young boy, to uplift people when they looked at what I was doing, so that they hopefully would feel that kind of intoxication that I feel, or that emotional shift that I feel when I'm in nature, and also when I'm painting and drawing.
Well, what's the key ingredient, in your opinion, in the process of when you're doing your artwork? And does it vary?
There is a key ingredient. It's funny, I teach a lot, and a lot of art students will ask me, what's the secret, what's the secret? And I say, well, it's a lot of hard work, but there is a secret. But if I tell you, you're not going to like it.
Well, that's right. No chef gives away their sauce.
Well, I will,
do
because the secret is, quite simply, to totally fall in love, completely in love with what you're doing at that moment. You have plans for a finished painting or whatever, but it's what you're doing right at that moment. When you fall totally in love with that and become so absorbed, time stops.
Yes.
You're almost in like medieval time that the medieval artist would have experienced, that it just stops. There are no distractions, and when you're totally in love with what you're doing, that is when you're opened up most fully to what's coming down through you from other realms.
It's really a gift to think like that, isn't it, really? Because a lot of people are not able to switch off. You're surrendering yourself to that, which is lovely to hear. So is there a form of meditation involved?
That's a really beautiful way to describe it, actually.
Because I personally find that quite difficult.
Right.
Because we're all in our own world, and as an artisan, where I can sit back, I love people like yourself who are like guitarists or singers or musicians, and here you are a painter, and you create this magic. And yet there are other people in practical endeavours or politics or in the capacity of what we're doing, which I suppose is a form of an artisan. But you can really just surrender to it. You just fall into it, don't you? And you channel.
I have to surrender to it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, my personality gets in the way, and that filters it, which is not good.
Yeah. What do you mean when you say personality? You mean ego?
The egoic, yeah, in the traditional sense of the word, the who I am and who I believe myself to be.
Yes.
That gets in the way as a filter. If I can remove that, forget about who I am, and distract that part of my mind, which is the conscious reasoning mind, and let that other come through, it's much more potent, much more powerful, and it's much more natural. I'm opened up to it much more deeply and much more profoundly.
There's a purpose in art.
Yes, yeah, and that purpose is to because of that innate thing that is in everybody, it's to uplift people and remind them of who they are and where they come from, because that inspiration has come from that same place, from that same space.
And to get to that space, do you meditate before? Do you meditate after? And I can really understand what you're saying in terms of when I've often said to people, when I start doing a makeup on somebody, I lose all sense of space and time. And as much as I'm impatient as a person in my personality, there's the most meticulous details don't bother me when I'm doing that, because I consider it art as much as you do. And I do feel that you become or step into another space. I don't, however, have time to get prepared for that. I'm talking to a person while I'm doing their makeup. So does meditation really help you do that? And how long would you say it would take for you from the start to the finish of one particular piece of work?
Well, to answer the last question first, it can take anything from a few days to several weeks. In fact, there are some pieces I brought out and worked on and on for months, on and off. It's a long process because of the detail and everything else. But I do meditate a lot, but ever since I was young, before I even learnt about meditation, the actual act of painting and drawing is a meditation in itself. And that's why so many people are attracted to that as a kind of therapy or relaxation.
Leslie, whereabouts is your artwork sold? The people will be watching this and say, where do we buy it here in Australia, or where do we purchase it overseas?
Yeah, well, I have exhibited all over the world, but at the moment I have a retail shop in Manly. It's called Etherica. It's on 23 Pittwater Road, and I do have a lot of my paintings in there.
And we'll make sure that we put the link up on Facebook. Your work is nothing short of etheric, magnificent, alluring, spectacular, mesmerising.
Thank you.
I've been watching it coming up on the screen. Your work is just beautiful, and I'm so glad I live near Manly because I want to come to your gallery and see it. Now that link is on the Facebook and the website for you to check out. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's
Sharing
been
your
absolute
views.
pleasure.
It's lovely, Leslie. Thank you very much. And details there on our screen coming up intermittently throughout the show, and also we'll be popping down to the gallery, especially for around Sydney, and checking out your works. Leslie, thank you very much for coming into the show.
so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Peter and Sheila are back with us